This is CNN.
From Washington, Crossfire. On the left, Mike Kinsley. On the right, Pat Buchanan. Tonight, without a prayer? In the Crossfire, constitutional law professor Walter Dellinger, attorney Jay Sekulow, and Supreme Court plaintiff Daniel Weisman.
Good evening. Welcome to Crossfire. The Supreme Court heard arguments this week in the most important church-state case in years. With a firm conservative majority in place, this case reopens the question of prayers in public schools. 2 years ago, in Providence, Rhode Island, Deborah Weisman graduated from junior high school. At the ceremony, a rabbi delivered opening and closing prayers. Deborah's parents, although Jewish themselves, protested. In 1986, at another daughter's graduation, they had been asked to rise and give thanks to Jesus Christ. The Weisman's position is that any organized prayer at an official school ceremony is an unconstitutional establishment of religion. A variety of religious groups, backed by the Bush administration, argues that government accommodation of religion should be allowed as long as it is non-coercive. We'll talk to Deborah Weisman's father later in the program, but first let's hear from the lawyers. Pat?
Professor Dellinger, as an 11-year-old boy in a school in the South, you had to walk out of class with another Jewish kid who was the same age when they had Bible reading and Bible instruction in that classroom. Now, I can understand why the priest told you to leave, and I can understand a certain amount of embarrassment. But why would you let that embarrassment persuade you to deny all those other children access to the greatest book ever written?
Well, Pat, I wouldn't deny them access. They have all the opportunity outside of school to do that. And I even would favor at the high school level allowing students to organize their own religious groups. But what we're talking about is government sponsorship of religion, government initiation of religion, and even government control of the content of prayer.
Well, Professor Dellinger, it seems to me what we're talking about here is freedom. Your freedom not to have to be instructed in a Bible, the King James Version, in which you don't believe, but their freedom to be taught that voluntarily in public school, which, say, 50 other kids wanted, but you two didn't. Why can't you two kids walk out of the class and let them be instructed in the Word of God, in the greatest book ever written, without you, excuse me, but intolerantly denying that in the schools where their parents want it taught and they want it?
Well, I think what we're concerned about here is 2 centuries of understanding of what happens when government gets into the religion business. Now, I'm strongly in favor of the free speech and free exercise rights of all religious adherents, but when government itself gets involved, we're in trouble.
Wait a minute, Professor Dellinger. Now, let me quote you. You said in your piece, government may not seek either to promote or discourage religion. You say that's a good idea.
That's right.
George Washington said religion was necessary to good government. Now, it seems to me there's the father of the Constitutional Convention. We had school prayer for, what, 8, 10 decades or generations. And all of a sudden, we don't have it for 2 and it's thrown out. How could it have been unconstitutional when it was in the very schools that were created by the men who wrote the Constitution?
Well, I think Washington is quite right that for many of our leaders, religion has been an important guide in their lives, as it was for President Carter and many of our other presidents. But that's different from using the forces of government. We didn't have public schools at the time of the founding, but we did have a clear understanding of what happens when government takes control of religion.
Look, government.
You got one more, Pat.
One more, all right. Congress of the United States opens with a prayer, but it is unconstitutional for a public school to do the same thing Congress does. Don't tell me that, Professor.
I'm telling you exactly that. Every principle has its limiting point, and the court has held that there are unique historical circumstances for Congress, but that public schools are a place where no child should be made to feel that she is a religious stranger.
Jay, this rabbi gave a non-sectarian prayer at this junior high graduation. What if he'd given an outright Jewish prayer, Hebrew and everything? Would that be okay with you?
Absolutely, because being exposed to speech, even if that speech was sectarian, they better get used to it, young people, because that is exactly how our system is based. And Michael, the bottom line in this case is censorship. We say you can only say certain speech, but don't mention God. In fact, this judge said in the lower court that the statements he made, they were very eloquent. He said, God of the free, hope of the brave. But don't use the word God. If he would have just removed that, cleansed that, sanitized it, that would have been fine. It's censorship.
What if the Providence, Rhode Island school system decided that every graduation ceremony at every school level should have Jewish prayers with Hebrew and everything. That wouldn't be an establishment of religion?
It could become an establishment of religion, but that's not what happened here. Let's take a look what really is at stake in this case. It isn't about a rabbi giving a prayer every year, the same prayer.
I'm just trying to find out what your understanding is of what is and is not an establishment of religion.
It is an establishment of religion when the government coerces participation in that and puts its imprimatur behind it to the point of a compulsion, directly or indirectly. But let's look at...
So how is it different if it happens at one graduation ceremony or every graduation ceremony?
I didn't say... No. But you missed my point. If that rabbi would have said it each time, if they invited this rabbi back, every time, that wouldn't constitute in and of itself a violation of the establishment clause.
You mean to say if this very rabbi, this Rabbi Guterman was his name, went to every single graduation ceremony in Providence, Rhode Island, and conducted a Jewish prayer at every, and that was the only prayer that went on, as was the case in this one, you would not say at some point the Jewish religion is being established in Providence, Rhode Island? Are you nuts?
No, I'm not nuts. I'm constitutionally correct. And here's the problem. Let's look at what's happened. It's not just, this case is not just about a rabbi and a prayer. It's about the Bible being censored from school classrooms. It's about a teacher in Denver, Colorado, who had 240 books in his classroom library. 2 of them were excised. Principal never asked how they were used. There were books about the American Indian religion. There were books about the Greek gods. What was removed, though, Michael, was what? The book that said The Life of Jesus and the Bible in Pictures. 2 Christian books out of 240 censored out. It's censorship.
Jay, give me an example. If a rabbi delivering a Jewish prayer at every single ceremony in the public school system does not constitute establishment of religion, give me an example of something that does constitute establishment of religion.
You do not get your diploma from high school unless you participate in this activity and follow this prayer. That's when the government has coerced it. But you know what we're saying here? We don't like speech that sometimes we disagree with. But the price of freedom is that sometimes we're going to hear speech we don't like. And if it's once a year from a rabbi, that's the price of liberty. I'm willing to pay for it.
Michael, you may think this is a strong position, but in the oral argument,
it's a nutty position.
In the oral argument, Charles Cooper said that a state could vote through its legislature to establish Christianity or the Baptist Church as the official state religion, as long as they didn't coerce anyone to participate. Is that what you heard him say?
Well, that was what we had in 9 states at the time of the signing of the Constitution. But let's get back to this question of prayer as religious speech. Let's take the prayer issue at the graduation. It seems to me what you have, prayer is a form of joint speech. And you would defend, I'm sure, a group that gets out in public and says, you know, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today? That's free speech.
Right.
But what you are doing is constricting a kind of speech called religious speech and saying that is out wherever we find that out. And it comes down to, again and again, as our other guest says, to Christian speech, which is the one that's being thrown out.
Now, you're missing a clear distinction here. I think if the valedictorian is chosen on the basis of having the best grades in the class, gets up and says, I got where I am today because of my faith in Jesus Christ, and I want to offer her a prayer, she is fully within her rights in doing that, because that's her decision. Now, this case is different.
Dellinger saying who can say what and when.
No,
you are the censor.
The First Amendment is saying that private citizens, but its central principle is that private citizens are free to speak of their religious beliefs, and they're free when they're on school property. The government itself is not.
You do recognize, don't you, that just that the First Amendment makes a distinction between the freedom of religion and freedom of speech. Freedom of religion has a flip side. It says, yes, there's freedom of religion, but the government cannot establish religion, whatever that means. We can argue about what that means. But in the religion, I just want you to agree that in the area of religion, the government must be more careful about the 4 kinds of speech it itself engages in than in non-religious areas, simply because there's an extra clause in the Constitution there, and we're all strict constructionists.
Now, hold it. Let's remember.
Well, just to answer my question.
It's a simple answer. The simple answer is you're misconstruing the argument, because what Walter said about the valedictorian speech, the existing Supreme Court precedent has outlawed and censored that valedictorian from making that speech that says, I want to thank Jesus Christ because I've graduated today the top of my class.
Well, that's true.
But
that's wrong.
But it is true, Walter, all over the country. And the Lemon test, which is the existing test, frankly, has just gone sour. It's created havoc. And the concern that I saw the court express today was they realized that the existing precedent just doesn't work. We've got to reformulate this idea.
Okay, coming up next, we've got the father who was so offended by a prayer at his daughter's graduation that he sued all the way to the Supreme Court.
Crossfire is brought to you by GE. From plastics to financial services, we bring good things to life.
He was 50 when it happened. In 3 months, he went from perfect vision to almost total blindness. In test after test, doctors were at a loss. Finally, a test was done using GE's revolutionary magnetic resonance imager.
Look at this. Incredible.
The doctors discovered a tumor affecting his optic nerves, and he was treated. Within days, he got his vision back.
Hey, how about a smile?
And everything that came with it.
Dear Folgers, I was catering brunch for 950 people when I forgot the ground coffee. Then I was reminded of your restaurant commercials where people were secretly switched to Folgers crystals. So I tried it.
Let's go.
I never received more compliments. You made a believer out of me and a lot of other people.
Folgers Crystals, proven with fresh brewed coffee drinkers.
Thanks, Folgers. Ed Merrigan.
The Murine Earwax Removal System has drops that safely loosen hardened wax when used as directed, plus an ear washer to gently flush wax away. Murine, the complete medically approved system to safely remove earwax.
How many men you got lined up?
None yet.
Well, you better get going, man.
Just a reminder, when you think duplication, think meter copiers.
Hey, how about a little round mark?
The Hawks on TBS.
Welcome back. The issue: is a voluntary prayer at a public school graduation a violation of the First Amendment? Our guests, Attorney Jay Sekulow, Senior Counsel for Concerned Women for America, Professor Walter Dellinger, who was once a law clerk to Justice Hugo Black, and Dan Weisman, the father of the plaintiff in whose name the case was brought. Dan Weisman.
Yes, sir.
Question. You said that you felt humiliated, I guess, several years before when a Christian prayer was offered and the invocation asked to pray in the name of Jesus, and you felt similarly offended when this Jewish prayer was offered. I mean, isn't it an act, in essence, of intolerance on your part, simply because you are embarrassed or humiliated, to demand that the government, in the person of the court, restrict all prayers voluntary at graduations in which hundreds or thousands of people are involved who are not offended?
Well, I guess it's how you view what we experienced. We attended what is a publicly sponsored event, expecting a purely secular activity for which we pay taxes, and we found instead, in 1986, the original graduation, that we were forced to participate in a religious ritual other than our own.
Well,
and I felt not so much offended, I felt accosted.
All right, let's take that term
and I felt
coerced.
it was inappropriate.
All right, let's take that term coerced. It seems to me that everybody here who acted at that graduation did so voluntarily. The prayer was voluntary, participation or non-participation was voluntary, and simply because you felt accosted or felt sort of embarrassed or humiliated, you are trying to get government to restrict the freedom of speech, religious speech, at all these public ceremonies. It seems to me the spirit of intolerance here is yours.
Well, it depends, again, how you want to interpret things. I think I'm trying to get government out of the religion business. I have no problem with
in the business there?
Well, it's a government-sponsored event, and it is religion occurring at a government-sponsored event. It seems to me that that's government sponsoring religion. Freedom of speech is not one and the same as government sponsoring religion. I would be in the same seat, in the same position, if anybody challenged freedom of religion outside of government-sponsored events. There's a distinction here.
Suppose it was not the rabbi, but the man conducting the ceremony who got up and said, "Let's give thanks to God. The food is wonderful, and it didn't rain today." And here's you running to the Supreme Court saying, "That's it."
Well,
These guys are using offensive words that happen to be religious, at a public ceremony, and let's constrict these guys' freedom of speech henceforth.
I didn't run to the Supreme Court. The School Board of Providence ran to the Supreme Court. I ran to the school board and said, look, please don't do this anymore. It's inappropriate in a multicultural district such as our own. They reframed the issue as a legal issue, and they ran it to the Supreme Court. Again, you're making you're blurring.
No, excuse me, Mr. Weisman, I'm asking you to take a look at it the way everybody else takes a look at it, but Dan Weisman, who's talking about how he's all churned up because in an audience, probably, let's say 75 or 90% of which were Christian, they offer a prayer, and you want to restrict this because you're the only guy in that audience who is ticked off. Well, and so everybody follows Weisman's rules, and whatever your rules are, what you want to say, you can't do it unless you clear it with Weisman.
It's not Weisman. It's the Constitution of the United States.
Well, that's
the
Constitution.
Mr. Weisman,
yes,
this
sir.
is Mike Kinsley. What would it have taken? Pat keeps saying this prayer was voluntary at the ceremony. Both the prayer by the Protestant minister, if it was Protestant, and the prayer by the rabbi. What would it have taken to not participate if you had wanted to not be voluntarily?
You're raising the issue of coercion.
Right. I'm asking you, he says it's voluntary. Was it voluntary?
Well,
Maybe it was.
I don't even think that's the issue, but if you want to talk about voluntary, I was sitting in the middle of a row, and we were asked to stand, and then we were asked to give a moment of silence to honor Jesus Christ. For me to act according to my own religious imperatives, I would have had either to sit down or get out of that row and get out of that auditorium as quickly as I could. It was an impossible situation.
Mr. Weisman, why not sit there? Let me give you an example. I'm sure I've gone to speeches where the speaker was somebody I disagree with and the audience loved, and they all got up to applaud him, and I'm sit there on my can because I don't. I'm sure I'd be much more comfortable in the group if you got up and did. But these are situations we run into every single day, and what Weisman is saying, and his friends on the school board is, because Weisman is embarrassed and doesn't want to stay seated, nobody can engage in religious speech.
You're missing the point, and you keep cutting me off, so you don't let me make my point. It has nothing to do with Weisman being offended. It has to do with Weisman being affronted by a government practice imposing religion on Weisman, and, by the way, probably 20% of the audience who just didn't have the wherewithal to complain. I had a particular situation where I have tenure in a state institution, and the retribution that did come my way was unable to be successful in terms of costing me my job.
Let me ask you this.
But a number of people did share with us that they also felt what happened was inappropriate and that they thought we were taking the right position.
Okay.
But I'm not trying
Mr. Weisman,
to block.
I have to cut off your free exercise of speech for a moment. You'll get another chance, and even Pat will get another chance when we come back.
Hello, I'm Susan Rook. At the top of the hour with strength and dignity, Magic Johnson retires from professional basketball. The U.S. Supreme Court is asked to decide once and for all if abortion will continue being legal, and economists give a diagnosis on the U.S. economy. All at the top of the hour on Prime News.
Imagine your refrigerator with bigger door shelves for bigger bottles, with leftovers left in quick-serve trays for leftover space, more space, nearly 27 cubic feet, and a door in the door for things you use more. Imagine GE's Space Center 27.
Ford Motor Company. Profiles in quality. Teamwork.
We work good as a team here on a job like this where all four of us can work together. That's what I said in '82. And today, teamwork is more important than ever.
Our paint job is only as good as a primer coat.
My primer coat's only as good as the body prep.
My body prep starts with a quality body panel. Together,
our goal is to build the highest quality cars and trucks
in the world.
At Ford, quality is job one.
Ricola, the all-natural herb cough drop imported from Switzerland. Ricola has been soothing throats and relieving coughs naturally for over 60 years.
With 5 powerful cleaning agents, Fantastic not only outcleans all others on greasy kitchen dirt, it's the perfect do-it-yourself cleaning kit for almost every surface in your kitchen and bath. 5 Cleaner Fantastic. More power, more places.
It's Grand Central Station. It's Carnegie Hall. It's a late-night bistro and a banquet hall for 50. It's a GE Monogram kitchen. With GE Monogram appliances of such dramatic beauty and original style, they have no equal. So with Monogram appliances, your kitchen can be everything you ever dreamed it could be. Because you may call it a kitchen, but at GE, we know it's really your living room.
Jay Sekulow, the Bush administration is being very insistent that this case will not lead to everyday prayers in public schools. This is only about official ceremonies and so on and so forth. You don't buy that, do you? You want there to be prayers in public schools, and you're hoping this will lead to it.
No, I don't want mandatory school prayer, period. I do think, and Walter would agree with me, that students themselves have the voluntary right to pray. It's been recognized before by the Supreme Court. This case is not going to change the Regent prayer that was offered in 1962, where the state made the prayer, announced it, and said this is what everybody's going to pray.
But Pat here is going to be perfectly happy if we ended up back where we were back in 1962, where there were official prayers, Protestant prayers.
No, I agree with him. The regions, government guys ought not to be writing prayers.
But that was what was happening in 1962.
Government prayers, no, they want
when poor Walter Dellinger, who you have so little sympathy for, was feeling ostracized.
I want to ask Walter one question. Okay. You made a statement. You said, no child should be made to feel a religious stranger. Now, let's take an example of a Rastafarian child who goes to school and's got the dreadlocks and everything like that. What are we supposed to do with children who have maybe that are Jewish or Muslim or Catholic or whatever, go there? What you are asking is that everybody must throw out all religious expression that they're uncomfortable with when we're a pluralistic society, as we've been told, and it seems what's happening here is one member of the minority can eliminate all freedoms of expression for the majority.
Pat, this isn't about Daniel Weisman's feelings or sensitivity. It's about our sense that if we're going to protect religion, we need to keep government out of it. Now, the issue here is not the Establishment Clause violation. The Establishment Clause violation in this case did not occur when Rabbi Weisman took the podium. It occurred earlier when government officials decided that there would be prayer and decided what kind of prayer they wanted and made an agreement with Rabbi Weisman that if he wanted to be on the podium, what he was going to have to do was pray. It's that government decision that's the heart of this case.
How about that, Jay? I mean, you can see the school board is obviously going to have a committee says this year we'll have a rabbi, next year we'll have a priest. It's interesting. If that isn't government involvement in religion, what is?
Michael, it's been 200 years in this country. We've been having prayer ceremonially for a long, long time. You know what's most interesting here? I heard Mr. Weisman say, and I'm sure he's sincere, that he didn't want to be exposed to that speech. Government shouldn't be doing that. But when he was in that Supreme Court building, listening to those oral arguments, when those justices came in, I'm sure like everyone else, he stood up. And even if he didn't stand up, he heard them say, God save the United States and this honorable court, because that's the price of freedom.
There are anomalies, there's no question, but you just said you don't want things to go back to where they were in 1962, but now you're saying you're defending what was happening for 200 years.
No.
Which one is it?
It's the clear. The one that is right is I don't have to be forced to make that prayer or participate in that prayer, but being forced...
Until 1962, people were regularly forced to participate in prayers. Students were forced, or they had to go through a humiliating process of leaving the room.
No. You've missed. You don't. That's not even what the case said. The case gave the young people an option out. Where Walter is correct, and I think you missed this, is you had the state composing those prayers, and you had the people having to listen to them in a state environment. But this is Rabbi Gutterman's prayer. You know what's interesting? I'll tell you who wrote this prayer, or tried to rewrite it, was the federal court judge that said, take out the word God and everything's fine.
That's where you're headed once you start allowing the government to initiate prayers.
Where we're headed is to a commercial. We're out of time. Thank you, Professor Dellinger. Thank you, Mr. Sekulow. Weisman, thank you, too. Thank you. Pat and I will be back in just a moment.
At GE, we have an idea that could help eliminate pollution from the atmosphere. An idea that could save power plants 3 million tons of coal a year and 1 million barrels of oil. GE's Energy Choice lights. If we all changed to these lights, we'd save our resources, and you'd save enough on your electric bill to all but pay for the bulbs. GE Energy Choice. No wonder the light bulb is the symbol for a brilliant idea.
Around 1900, GMC Truck built America's first gasoline-powered truck and went on to make trucks our only business. A heritage of trucks that, some say, worked a little harder, lasted a little longer. And that's still true today in a truck that gives you the most standard payload and the strongest resale of any full-size pickup. Sierra, from GMC Truck, more proof of the strength of experience.
It's not just the way she moves about and looks, but simply how she looks after you. The beauty of the Philippines comes shining through, and the charm of the Philippines comes shining through on Philippine Airlines, shining through.
Throughout history, they have conquered and divided. Now they will try to join together to economically rival the world. Hear the hopes and fears of Western Europe on a CNN special report, Sunday, 9 Eastern.
For a transcript, send $3 to Crossfire Transcripts, Journal Graphics Incorporated, 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203, or call 303-831-9000.
Michael, if you ask yourself, who is fighting to enlarge freedom here, and who wants to restrict it and narrow it and prevent free speech, religious speech, I think Mr. Weisman is on the side of the censors.
Look, it's not a question of censorship, it's a question of government participation. And I agree that the current test we have is very fuzzy, but I'm amazed you don't have more sympathy with little Walter Dellinger, the 11-year-old kid. Every day they had a Protestant prayer in his school. The priest had told him, you cannot listen to that prayer, and he was forced to leave the classroom.
I have sympathy.
Wasn't that an establishment of religion?
No, I have sympathy for Dellinger, but the right of those people to read the Bible freely is there, too.
It was a Protestant prayer led by the teacher. From the left, I'm Mike Kinsley. Good night for Crossfire.
Freely engaged in. From the right, Pat Buchanan. Join us tomorrow night for another edition of Crossfire.
Prime News is next. Here's a quick look at the headlines.
Thank you, Michael. Coming up, the AIDS virus ends the career of Magic Johnson. A tax plan on Capitol Hill that might have made Robin Hood proud. And Iraq's nuclear dreams. The nightmare may have been nearer than first thought. Those stories and more on Prime News after this message and a local cable break.